I'm Shwa, and you are listening to Light Up with Shwa, a weekly podcast to open our hearts and minds on a journey with me. Hi, my name is Shwa, and I'm the host and founder of a podcast called Light Up with Shwa. This is part 2 with Judy Nauman. I don't think I am satisfied with the conversation we had earlier, and I do want to have some more, information out of her, glean some more of her knowledge and experience and expertise. And I am sure you have enjoyed the part 1 with Judy. And if you haven't, then please go and listen to that or watch that. Please don't forget to subscribe, rate and review Light Up with Shwa, and you can find Light Up with Shwa on YouTube to watch, or the Groton channel, or you can listen to it on iTunes, TuneIn Radio, or Spotify. So here we go again with Judy Nauman, and I hope you will enjoy, and this time some more deeper questions. Hi, Judy.
Hi, Shwa.
Thank you for being here for another episode.
Thank you.
Just, that wasn't enough with Judy,
Oh, there's not going to be much to be picking here, I'm afraid.
No, there's a lot. There's
Thank
a lot.
you.
It takes a little time to get answers from you, but... So talk about interfaith and intercultural activities that you have been, and there are a few that you would, like to mention.
Well, one of the things we had started to talk about was both of us are on the Groton Interfaith Council. Yes. And that's been an interesting process about how do we bring people to the table to learn more about interfaith. And so, as you know, I'm sort of telling you things you know, but we've tried a lot of different things about do we want to educate folks about different faith traditions. So we've tried different ways of talking about break the fast in Ramadan, about Sukkot, about the Seder for some of the Jewish holidays. We have done a Christmas tree lighting ceremony to honor the Christmas tradition for the Christians.
Community tree lighting, right?
We've now made it more of a community tree lighting. Okay. So we've tried whether we wanted to focus on a specific faith tradition, and now I think we've moved to more about where the faith traditions intersect. So one of the things we talked about is looking at the fasting tradition as it overlaps different faith traditions, because there's a fasting tradition in the Christian faith, there is in the Jewish faith, there is in the Islamic faith.
And many other faiths, but here we are more talking about some.
So I think that's kind of where we as an Interfaith Council have moved. And one of the things that you and I both really were so involved in was we knew there was going to be a Hindu temple coming to Groton, and we both saw this film on Waking in Oak Creek. And although it was about a Sikh temple in Wisconsin, a white supremacist opened fire in that temple thinking it was a Muslim temple and that he was killing Muslims. And it was a horrible tragedy. Many people were killed. But they made a film more about what the community did and what the police department did to come together to try to get to know each other better after the shooting. And it was our intention to show this film in Groton so that people would begin to know there's a Hindu temple in their community coming, there are other faith traditions in their community, and they would reach out to get to know them. Heaven forbid that there would have to be a tragedy to happen before we would do that. So those are the kinds of things we've been doing in the Interfaith Council, trying to get people to come to the table and learn a little bit more about each other.
And that's where I would say your positive worrying can help.
Yes.
With my not worrying too much, but being concerned and bringing such an event was a combination of our both having an approach of like, no, I think it's very important. I'm saying, yeah, it is important, but you're saying, no, this is very important because God forbid,
Yeah.
And that's where I think you can use your worrying in this manner, that you can be foreseeing some things in order to make things better. So
that's wonderful. You just made that an asset. All right.
So
Yes, that is.
and also we in Groton Interfaith Council we have done interfaith panel discussion.
Yes.
And brought different people, and we are hoping to do that more.
Yes.
But thank you for that. And also talk about another group that we have in Groton that I am not so involved yet in it, but you are. So would you like to talk about that?
I would. You just reminded me, though, can I say a wee bit more about
sure.
the panel discussions?
Yes.
In particular, we decided to, as you know, focus on the Abrahamic faiths, and it wasn't a term I knew before the Interfaith Council, but as you know, it's the faith traditions that have come from the prophet Abraham as the father of their traditions, and that would be Christianity, Islam, and Judaism. And we had that panel discussion with those three faiths being represented. What I took away from that discussion, and I know lots of other folks did, those three panelists not only talked about the similarities where those three faiths overlap, because they have common traditions in Abraham as their dad, their father, but those three panel members also talked about where they differed. And I think all of us in the audience felt how rich that was, that we don't want to just gloss over how they're different. We really do need to honor the differences and honor where they're not different. And I think we all left that conversation going, okay, they are indeed different, and there are similarities. Can't we honor both? If we can embrace that, hallelujah. I think they really helped me see, oh no, let's not talk about how they're different. Yeah, let's do. Let's absolutely understand that.
And acknowledge that. And there's nothing wrong in differences. Because I always say now, it's part of my conversation now, that don't we have differences in our own families?
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
So think of families and then come to the table with that approach that, yes, this is a family member that is annoying and I don't like him or her, but, I will be willing to, let go a little at least, or try to, make a good relation or terms with it. So I think that's how I have been doing.
I think you're right. Well said.
So, all right, that's good. So talk about civil discourse
I will.
A little bit.
So about a year and a half ago, a group got together in Groton, and their intention after the presidential election had really split people in different camps, to want to figure out a way that people could have conversations with each other about differences without wanting to duke it out. And we were invited, so they invited people of Republican and Democrat positions, but also interfaith. So it's really why you and I got included on that group, because they thought that would be a richness in that mix of different conversations too. So we've been meeting together for now a year and a half, talking about how can we have conversations in Groton in particular, in a way where, again, the intention is not to convince you my way is right, but to at least build a better understanding of what one believes that's different from me. We've gone through some training. We've contracted with an organization in Cambridge called Essential Partners, and they have a very well thought out methodology for how to get people at the table to talk about differences.
So you are better equipped now, right?
I think so. Yeah. And they also have very important ground rules. Their ground rules include there is no trying to change someone's mind. And somehow parking that at the door relieves you of that, you gotta believe what I believe. Yeah. Their two goals of their conversations, the folks from Essential Partners, are that of course you learn more about someone who thinks very differently from you, but in the course of the dialogue, their goal is to help you understand more about where your positions have come from. So we've had a couple of practice dialogues, and I think this fall, the Groton Civil Discourse Project will pick a couple of controversial topics in Groton and begin to have small group meetings where we have conversations with each other about conversations that would typically get people locked in opposition, to have those two goals. One, that I learn more about my own thoughts about that position, and two, I understand more somebody who differs very much from me.
So do you see yourself prepared enough and do you feel comfortable going into it?
Oh, I have some trepidation. And we're going to have a few more practice dialogues because it's a very set methodology that this organization gives you.
Okay.
And a lot of it is preparation and how you form the questions. So the questions force people to think about something differently as opposed to, what do you believe about gun control?
Do they take your input in changing those questions?
Yes, there is definitely conversation.
Too structurally, the methodology is not too rigid? Or is it?
It is once it's established, they do adhere to a certain format. So rigid is the wrong word, but it is to keep it in a tone so you're not in the same old debate like you always are. I mean, it is to try to help all of us step away from the way we have those conversations. Because, when you pick a topic of high controversy, we all lock in to the way we've always talked about it.
So can you give an example of a controversial topic?
Gun control. The first conversation we had in training was gun control.
Okay.
And everybody has a pretty set opinion about where they are with that.
Okay.
And that dialogue really helped us. They asked us questions in a way that made me think more about, where do my thoughts about how I feel about guns come from? And I really did leave that conversation with a better understanding about my own thoughts, as well as people in the room who did not at all agree with me. I had more of a curiosity about what they thought, not just how could you be so stupid to think that?
Right.
And I think if you can crack open a conversation and leave with those two thoughts, you're on the right path.
So do you see people coming to the table on these topics, and those who are in this group, not changing, but a little more flexible? Do you see them
That's a good
having
question.
a good dialogue, conversation?
Yes, and again, we've just done practice.
Yeah.
But there were a couple of folks who hadn't been engaged in the process, and they came in, and we said to them, we're practicing on you. We're practicing this methodology. And those folks said, I'm leaving this conversation with more curiosity about the other side. Well, I think that's a victory, personally.
So any other challenges that you would like to mention about this process and talking to people, and how was it going? Any challenges that you need to overcome?
How much time do you have? Well, so there's a facilitator of the conversation, right? If somebody is formally designated a facilitator. And here's an example. I'm so used to, when I'm listening to someone, shaking my head, giving them all kinds of visual cues. When you're a facilitator in this particular format, you almost want to be invisible. So the conversation is among the folks in the room, and you don't want to appear to take sides. So this could almost seem like taking sides. So for me to kind of calm this down, that is hugely difficult for me. And I understand the intent is that the facilitator.
I have that, so I will be really awful. I will be like, okay, you're out.
It is part of the training.
Yeah, training.
So there's just one example. And
so you have accomplished it a little bit? Like, have you been better?
I'm working on it.
Okay. So next time when I'm talking to you, I'll stop you from shaking your head, right?
Well, in this format, it would be weird if I'm not going engaged. It's in that.
Not in this.
But when we practice, you're going to have to sit on my head, stop wiggling, and.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. That was helpful. So we have a lot going on to work on ourselves. I think this is more on self, and then once we explore and discipline ourselves, we would be better in conversation with others. Hopefully.
Hopefully.
Yeah. That's the intent, I guess.
Hopefully, I think so.
Learning more about where you come from.
Yes.
And then how to have a civil dialogue.
You bet.
Yeah, that's wonderful. So you have a good feeling about it.
I do.
Okay.
I do. And the people who put a lot of time into making this happen are amazing. Amazing.
Any misconceptions of Islamic faith that have been removed for you since you have been interacting with Muslims and attending events and all that?
Indeed. Well, I mean, before I got to know you, and some other members of our Interfaith Council who are also Muslim, I knew, what I read in the newspaper. I knew nothing, really. And those misconceptions are horrible. Those are...
So they have changed?
Oh, dearie, totally.
Okay.
I mean, I don't know about totally, but 100, much. I mean, for one thing, I've learned from you, but I'm thinking Dr. Kelly was so informative in this. and others that I've heard speak, that the folks that have been the most visible in terms of Muslims who have been terrorists do not represent the Islamic faith any more than a terrorist who bombed an abortion clinic in the name of Christianity represents the Christian faith, in my opinion. And I think I've really begun to understand they're criminals. They're folks who took God's name and did these horrific things in God's name. That isn't Islam. That isn't Christianity. That isn't that faith.
That individual.
That is that individual. And so, yes, I think first was learning those folks are not. And you have spoken so eloquently about, and your dad, too, if I may honor his memory, have educated me, both of you, so much more in what Islam, the core, as I understand them, the core values of Islam. And those folks who have so terribly represented Islam so are not holders of the faith. So that is first a big learning for me. And, you've spoken so eloquently about how the Quran and the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, have elevated the position of women, and there's such a common misunderstanding about that. I mean, I just continue to learn so much from you and other folks who are willing to talk to me about the faith.
Thank you for opening up and allowing that to come to us and to you, and we are together actually in this now. So wonderful. Thank you.
You bet.
So some questions that were left, because I know you are very good in your dealings, in my view. You do a lot in the community, GIC, civil discourse, and there's a whole list of things that you do. I want to explore more about you in terms of relationships. How would you, whether you take an interfaith approach or a relationship is relationship, right? Can be applied to any situation. But what can you advise from your experience to have a healthy, mindful, some do's and don'ts of a good, healthy relationship? What can people do in order for you to have a good relationship?
Of course, it's going to be do what I say, don't do what I do. It's much easier to give a prescription. It's going to be whatever I've been sort of thinking about the most right now. It isn't like in priority order. This is what you do first. I think lately, the temptation to give folks advice. So when someone brings you a problem, a friend, a dear friend, and they say, oh, this is happening in my life, the temptation to give them advice is almost impossible to avoid. And I think that probably rule number one is bite your tongue till it bleeds.
So avoid
advice.
Okay.
And that's real good in spousal relationships.
Okay.
But I think it's really important in friendships, and very hard. Okay. Unless the friend says, maybe even if the friend says, what would you do if you were me? I mean, a lot of times it's, well, more importantly is, what do you think? Even though it's very difficult. Just listen and just get them. Here, this doesn't always do it, but here in my head and heart, I think my friend really knows what he or she needs to do or wants to do or wishes they could do, and they don't really need me to say so. And if I could, and I do not always do this, but anyway, this is the proscription, not the... If I could figure out ways to pause and go, well, tell me what you think. Tell me what you tried. What's worked for you? Well, it would probably go better. So I think that's first.
Yeah. Anything else? Because you maintain your relationships. I've seen you. I mean, nobody's perfect, right? But these were good. The advising right away, listening more intently rather than talking, right? What else? Anything for younger generation, when you were young, comparing from that time to now? Anything for the younger generation? How they are doing good nowadays, anyways. But experience tells you that you used to do something that you think that you would have liked to avoid it now.
So I'm not a big social media person,
Okay.
but a little bit. So I'm going to answer this as if I were 20 and living an awful lot of my relationships in a social media world, because I think it's different
Okay.
than my early years, although maybe not. So I think also rule number 1 is pause before you answer, and that's way hard. In the dark ages, when email was the way people communicated, we used to say, do not answer in anger your email, because then it is in writing and it is forever there. And unless you're the world's greatest novelist, the inflection, the ability to put in what you really wanted to say, we're not good at this. So I worry about social media. My advice would be to young people who are using social media as a way to communicate, before you answer in anger, pause, because this won't necessarily capture your eyes, the eyebrows, the nuances that you hope to communicate. And I think people create anger and hostility and really conflict among friends when they didn't intend to, when it was misinterpreted. So that'd be my first, is that in
That's a good advice.
particularly social media, you see things that people say and you go, oh my gosh, you're going to really wish you hadn't said it like that in a week or an hour or 15 seconds.
That's a good advice. Any relationship advice for spouses? Because you're still together and you're doing well.
Yeah, well, that advice thing is that don't give advice. That'd be the first one. Yeah.
Don't give advice.
Oh, God.
Okay.
Yeah, I do. I think that would be...
That's a big one. Yeah.
And the other is, even though I swear I'm listening...
Okay. Okay.
This is true confession time.
Yeah.
I can ask a question, and then about 15 minutes later, ask the same question.
Oh. Okay.
And what does that say?
That means we didn't
I wasn't really taking it in. And I have noticed a slight sense of irritation in the spouse's voice when he says, you just asked me that question.
Okay.
So even though I would say, I'm a great listener, apparently I'm not always a great listener.
Well, you can't be always listening.
No.
You're a human being, aren't you? Or are you
just barely.
Angel? An angel, huh?
Yeah, right.
Okay.
Those would be my advice.
Okay. No, thank you.
You bet. Thanks for
that.
asking.
Thank you. Anything else you want to say before I ask you some more ending questions?
No, I think that's good.
Do you self-evaluate?
Maybe to a fault.
Okay.
Yes, I do. And to some extent, I think that's really important.
Okay.
I'm going to say one thing about that if I've got a little time.
Sure.
I'm currently working on kind of deepening my meditation practice. And I do a little bit of reading before. And I think part of that practice is to, when things show up, when thoughts show up, self-negative ones or whatever they are, to just acknowledge them. Oh, there's that. Oh, I recognize that. And then let it go without intense, not that one again. So it is a gentleness with what shows up. And I think the same with self-analysis. I don't think I want to stop analyzing, what was that? But to be gentle with it and to let it go.
Not to be too hard on yourself. Okay. That reminds me of a whole bunch of questions, and now I don't have time to do that. Anyways, what's the value of gratitude in your life?
That is a wonderful question. It is essential. And when I forget it, life isn't sweet. And to lose track of gratitude, I think, really does take the honey out of life. And to spend time really going, wow, I'm so grateful for the sound of wind in the trees. Little things puts that sweetness back in life. And it is easy to get caught up in whatever is making you and not notice. I know gratitude is essential for me.
Can you give an example of your daily thankfulness for something that you can share?
One is health.
Okay.
Every day that I wake up with health, I think there is no greater gift. Little things. I mean, I was blessed with wonderful parents, to go back to them. I mean, I grew up on a farm. I had amazing parents. They let me, I mean, I'm so grateful for that. I'm grateful for a great marriage, health, running water. What a gift is that? Turn on the tap and it's clean and there.
Yep.
And on and on.
Yep.
I don't always think of that, but yes.
So what makes you happy?
Good friends.
Good.
Good food.
Chai.
Good chai. Not just any chai. Good chai. I love being in nature.
Okay.
And
what does that do? Being in nature?
It lifts me. It reminds me about what's important. I probably feel closer to God.
Okay.
But I feel closer to God when I'm in a good conversation with the person that really matters to me. Those things make me happy.
Thank you. Thank you. What is the value of time, especially you being in FAA? And you must be very particular about time. But that time, and of course, time on earth, or value of time in a perspective that you like to take at this time. At this time.
I love it. So I do not know where I ever heard this, but in some course of my spiritual reading, there was a kind of a priority order of where one should spend one's time. And first priority is God, second priority was self, third priority was family, fourth priority was work. But for much of my work life, it was exactly reversed. First priority was work, second priority was family, third priority was self, fourth priority was God. I mean, I just got so caught up in the career and the work. So at this point in life, I have the luxury of being retired, although I've got myself so volunteer involved, but it's a luxury that I really try to recalibrate those priorities and also not to fritter what precious time I have away on worry. So then I worry about worrying, but I think time is so precious. And there's also a wonderful Buddhist quote about we operate under the misconception that time is unlimited. And I try to remind myself that it's not. So it's precious. That's what I think about time.
Thank you. And I will once again ask you, maybe you'll answer differently. What lights you up?
Well, I will answer differently because I'm thinking about being in a kayak with another dear friend in a kayak, and we heard a loon. That lit me up. So to be paddling in that kayak with you and hear that loon, wasn't that just magic? Yes, you bet.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Thank you, dearie.
Thank you for staying with me through this exciting episode. Please don't forget to subscribe and stay tuned for the next episode of Light Up with Shwa.